Okay, in this tutorial we're going to be looking at Google Forms. Google Forms is one of my favorite tools. I tease and call it the gateway tool or gateway drug tool for Google Apps, and that's just because it's a great entry tool. It's very easy to use, and it has great possibility in the classroom. And it's not a substitution tool. If you know anything about the SAMR model, substitution where, like, for instance, we were looking at Google Docs, and that's kind of like Microsoft Word. We were looking at Excel, and that's kind of like, we were looking at Sheets, and that's kind of like Microsoft Excel. It does have augmentation features such as the ability to comment and to collaborate, but they're very similar. But there's not a tool in Microsoft Office that's similar to the form tool in Google Docs yet. They probably will get there, but right now it's not there. So, Google Forms. Google Forms are great. They can be used for exit quizzes. They can be used to collect information from students, from parents, from anybody. They can be used to sign up for things. Just all kinds of different ways that Google Forms can be used. You are going to think of great ways to use it, I'm sure. So, this is going to be really basic. There are some things you can do with Google Forms. Like, for instance, you can create a quiz using Google Forms, and then use a tool called Flubaroo to grade the quiz for you, and then send the results to the students via email. There's all kinds of really cool things you can do with forms. But this is going to just be a basic to get you started and to get you exploring. I want you to know how to get in and how to, what are the features that you can use. So, here we are in the Google Drive. Remember, we get there by going to the waffle, clicking on the drive, make sure that we're in our school account, and now here we are. Now, if I want to create a form, two ways I can do it. I can just go to New and then create a form, or I can start by creating the form where I want it to sit, and I want my Google form to be in my folder for this lesson. So here's my Google Drive. I'm going to click the arrow down. I'm going to go find my folder for this class, the shared DLW Google Basics folder. And you'll see these are the two other things I've already shared in here. And now I'm going to create a form in here. So now I go to New. And you'll notice here that I don't see Google Forms of the choices, but I do see a More button. So if I come down to More, it gives me that Google Forms as my option. It's going to warn me that I'm creating this Google form within a shared folder. In this case, I actually want to do that, so I'm going to say OK. If I didn't want to do that, I could back out and create it just in my Google Drive or in another folder. So here's what the tool looks like. The first thing that I want to point out is the top, the form settings. It starts with the default, if you're in your Google Apps for Education account, it starts with the default of requiring you to be logged in to your district account in order to view the form. Now sometimes this is really handy, and I'll show you the ways that it's handy, but other times this is not what you want, okay? You want your form to be as accessible to people as possible, and you don't want them to have to log in to get it. The cool thing about forms is you can give a QR code or a link, and it can be accessed on a phone, it can be accessed on an iPad, it can be accessed in all kinds of ways, and you don't necessarily want it to be difficult to access. For instance, if you're collecting information from parents, they're not going to have a school login. I know a teacher who did a great lesson on what was for breakfast in different parts of the world. And so they created their form, they asked those questions, and then they shared the link on their Twitter account, and people from all over the world shared what they ate for breakfast that morning and where they were, and that all came into their data that they use to map and different things like that. So you don't always want the required login. So check that and think about what you're doing and make sure that's what you want. When you would want it is, for instance, if you were giving a quiz to students, or you wanted to make sure that you had the correct email address to respond to the people, or that kind of thing, then you might want to require a login. So, or for instance, you only want them to answer once, and then you want to make sure that that person logged in can only answer once. So if you do require it, you can also collect their username. And so what this will do is it'll tell you who has answered this form. That's very handy for lots of reasons. It will also, you can choose whether or not you want to show a progress bar. And then you can also choose that they can only answer once. So if they're logged in and they try to answer again, it's not going to let them. So this is really good if you're voting on something or something like that and you don't want to do it. Oftentimes, you do want them to be able to try again and make it right. But you know, there are some situations where you wouldn't. Also, the shuffle question order is nice if you are creating a quiz and kids are going to be sitting at a bank of computers, and so that there will be a different question showing on everybody's and they're not all working on the same one at the same time. So those are your options up at the top. And what I'm going to show you is just the basics of the form, but while we're doing it, let's think about how we could use this to do kind of a getting to know you activity with your students at the beginning of the year. So always as we start, I start with labeling my document, and in this case I'm going to label it kind of funky because it's for this course, but you might want to label it getting to know you or something like that. But for this particular activity, for this course, I'm going to name it, we're going to stick to our naming conventions, Google Basics, Forms, and then your name. Okay. And then I'm going to put down here in the description. So this is just, what is this form about? This is a practice form. We are going to create a form to use at the beginning of the year with students. Okay, and then you've got questions here. So your questions can be all different kinds of questions, and just so you can see, before I even ask this question, my first question is going to be their name. I can show you that. So name, and then here where it's, and obviously names say use your first and last name or whatever, if you need to give them a hint for how to answer the question. Sometimes you need that, sometimes you don't. It doesn't matter. Okay, and then right here where it says question type, I've got some choices. So for name, I would choose text, but I might want to choose paragraph text if I'm asking them to give a review of something or to explain something, etc. You've got a multiple choice. You've got checkboxes, and the thing about checkboxes is it lets you choose more than one choice. So you can see where that might be handy. Choose from a list is like a drop-down menu. So for instance, I use that a lot when I'm wanting to know which school you're at. So I have all the schools listed, and you choose from that list of which schools you're at. There's a scale, so you can do on a scale of 1 to 5, you know, how do you feel about this, that kind of thing. There's a grid, and a grid asks a question on one side, so that it's like a kind of like a rubric. You could use it like a rubric. You can have a date question, and that will give you a little calendar tool to put in the date, and time, same thing, it'll give you a time tool. So those are your different options for the types of questions you can answer. And Then the other thing that you have here is required question. So if this is something you want to make sure everybody answers and they can't get out of it and hit submit until they answer it, you would click the check mark here. Once you're finished with that question, you can hit done. Now, sometimes you create questions like maybe you're talking about U.S. regions and you've got 5 states and they're choosing, it's multiple choice questions and you're always going to have those 5 states and you're just going to tweak the question a little bit each time. You can use this duplication tool and it'll duplicate your question and then you can just tweak it the way you need to. So that's a good thing to know. This is for editing, your little pencil, and then of course you can hit the garbage can if you want to delete that question. And then to add an item, there's 2 things you can do. You can click on add item here and it just comes up with the same thing that we saw before. It defaults to multiple choice, but if I go to checkbox or I go to scale, it'll do the different options there. Another thing, if you're on multiple choice, you can, and I don't want you to do this for this one, but this is just something for you to know. You can go to a page based on an answer, kind of like choose your own adventure. But like for instance, if I could say which school are you at, and you choose a school, and then from that it would take you to a different set of questions than if you were at another school. So you can get really intricate with your questions, but for this we won't do that. Okay, and the other thing, so let's just say name, I'm just going to ask one question. What is your favorite subject in school? Now for this I could do several things. I could do multiple choice, but then I could have an other, or I could do choose from a list and have an other, checkboxes, etc. Or you could just use text and then they could say whatever they want. There's also advanced settings here, and under the advanced settings you can have data validation. So for instance, if the answer needs to be a number, or the answer needs to be an email, you can have it set up so it will remind you if you put in something that doesn't make sense. Okay, it's really simple to use. I'm not gonna get very far in here. I just wanted you to see that that's how you create your form. The other thing to know is as you're creating it, you can also move things around. Just by clicking on the side, the little thing turns blue and you can move things around. So we can add an item that way. This little drop down menu here gives you more options. So you have the same, the basics here, but then you also have some layout option. So maybe you're doing something and you've got one section that's going to be about school and one section that's going to be about home, etc. So you might want page headers. You can also add images and videos. So that's really great. Like you're a science teacher and you want to put up a picture, it's a diagram of an ear, and then you're going to ask questions that go along with that diagram. Same thing with the video. You can put the video in and then the questions go along with the video. Great, great thing to know. The video has to be a YouTube video, so you need to know that as well. Okay, so once you've got all your questions, then down at the bottom, this is your confirmation page. So when a student creates the form, they're going to hit submit, and this is what they're going to get. So you can say your response has been recorded, or thank you for taking the time. You can add something, or you can just leave it as the default. You can show a link so they can submit another response. So maybe this is something where, like a book review, and every time they write a book, they're going to add another entry. You can publish and show a link so you can see the form results. So again, maybe if you're voting on something, or like I said with the book review or something like that, you'd want people to see what other people are saying. And you can also have it so that there's a link so they can go back and edit their responses. Because sometimes you hit send and then you're like, I didn't mean to do that. So once you have it all done the way you want, you click Send Form. And what this is going to do is it's going to give you a link, and you can use that link to share your form with whoever you're asking to fill out the form. If you've got a web page or a blog, you can click this embed button here, and not only will it give you a link, it will give you a piece of code that you can put into your blog, and then the form will actually show up right in your web page. So they don't have to go anywhere. It's just right there, and they can answer the questions there. Okay. So anyway, we've got this form. You can play around with how to send it. The other things that you'll see here is view responses. So, well, first of all, let's look at view form. Click on view form. So this is what my form looks like. This is what people would see. This is how they would fill it out. So I'm just going to fill it out right here. And hit submit. So that would be what I would do. And then I would have those options of whatever it said. It doesn't give me the option to submit another one because I didn't have that checked. Okay, so now if I go back here, you'll notice it shows that there is one response. If I click on View Responses, my response shows up in a spreadsheet, which we just looked at. So you have your responses, they're here in a spreadsheet. This is really great, so you're collecting information. Maybe they're, again, working on a science experiment. They all do their stuff, and then they put their results in a form, which is really slick looking. They don't have to put it in a big spreadsheet, and all of their information shows up here. Maybe you have a formula for averaging or whatever you need to do with the results. Really handy, okay? But the great thing for you as a teacher is if you're collecting information, it all ends up in one place. Again, we talked a little bit about add-ons, and so think about that form. If it's a quiz, you can use the add-on Flubaroo to actually create a self-grading quiz. So these two tools work together, the form and the spreadsheet that it automatically creates for you. You don't have to create the spreadsheet. So back here, so I've got my, I can view my responses. I can view the live form to see what it actually looks like. I can change the theme. So my form was just really simple, but if I click change the theme, you'll notice there's all these funky little themes over here. And I can add a theme. This is really nice if you're embedding it somewhere. So it just looks a little nicer on your web page or something. You can also edit questions. So if you need to add a question or you notice there's a typo or something, you can come back and edit them. All right. So that is the basics of forms. I'm going to give you some different resources for just looking at ideas of how people use forms. They're very simple to use. Get in and play with them. You can start off really, really simple, or you can get really, really advanced and do a lot of great things with them. So that's Google Forms, and for your assignment for this course is to create a Google form, share it in the shared folder, and my suggestion is to create a form that you would actually use as a getting to know you form with your students. If you've got another need and you want to do that and share that form, you can do that as well. So, but you're creating a Google form and you're going to share it in the shared folder.